IC Radio Network and UWS strongly promote the use of grassroots patriot music. Please drop us a line and we'll play your music.
Yeah, hi, this is Detlev of Wake News Radio, Wake News TV here on our UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio Marathon, starting with the English part on this particular very important day. It's December 14th, 2013. And, you know, we are heading towards the end of the year, the calendar year, obviously. Well, we are learning lots of things. People are awakening around the world, and that is a very good thing to have and to experience. And as you remember, UNITEDWESTRIKE is about waking up, is about resisting tyranny and trying to build our future, how our future should be. And that's our topic today, with living as living should be. And if you're interested in listening to our whole program of today, which will be lasting until very early on Sunday mornings, the next Sunday, coming up Sunday. So if you're interested, and I've got lots of listeners here from the German area still tuning in, and some of the Americans are already awakening and listening here to our fantastic show in our UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio Marathon. Yes, you can have a look at the program. Just go to our website, UNITEDWESTRIKE.com, and you'll find on the header the button chat. If you are, you can use this chat obviously as well as the chats on my website, wakenews.net, Wake News Radio, and you're welcome to do so during the whole show. You can also ask questions, obviously, to our guest, which is soon coming here live. So if you are going to UWS Radio and chat and push the button there, then you will see our program underneath the chat box. And I'm happy to announce that we were able to make a connection, although pretty different, because our guest is currently in the midst of the nature of South Africa, somewhere on a farm. But he found a corner in the house where there is a certain signal, and I'm hopefully will be able to continue this connection. Otherwise, we have to reconnect. And Michael Tellinger is our guest today in this second part of our UNITEDWESTRIKE Radio Marathon, and I'm welcoming him. He's actually well known to most of the audiences of people who are awake. He's very active. He is not only an activist, he's also an author. So he has written books, and he's also studying history, also practically. And he will be telling us a few things about this as well. And he's mainly also now a founder of the UBUNTU liberation movement from South Africa. He's already established a party there. So he's really also putting his emphasis behind political activism. And this is also very important because we want to look in the future. And that's why we are saying today, living as living should be is very important for us. And let's see whether Michael has tuned in already. Michael, are you there?
I'm here, Detlev. Lovely to hear your voice.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. You could make it. I mean, you are so busy traveling around, and you are living in a country which is vast in terms of land and distance, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, South Africa is a big country. Not as big as the United States, but it's big enough to get lost in. And you're quite right. We're visiting some friends on a farm. We're in the middle of nowhere, and I was panicking because we weren't getting proper signal here. And then we found one corner in the house where there's 3G. But I don't know if you got my other emails. I've had a really bad week with technology. My computer crashed. I lost all my data. I lost all your information, and the brand new computer that I got refuses to work with the programs that I loaded onto it. So it's been a real challenge with technology the last week.
Well, finally, everything turns out to be good and right. So I'm very happy to have you here on our United We Strike radio show. Now, for most people, Michael, you are well known who are in the field of, educating themselves about what the truth is really all about. And maybe you can summarize for all of those who are not familiar with your biography what you've done and how you got there where you are now.
Well, thanks very much, Detlev. I have been searching for the answers to the mystery of life, like many people have for many years. And I guess when I was 18 years old, it was probably Eric von Däniken that really shook me into thinking out of the box and realizing that there's a lot more out there that we can embrace than just the textbooks that are given to us at school. And so I think when I was 18, that's when my journey really started, and that was in 1978. So it's a long time ago already. And in 2005, I sat down and I wrote a book called Slave Species of God, which pulls together all the scientific and esoteric and historical knowledge and information to pretty much provide us with evidence that we're a species that has been manipulated genetically, that we are not part of an evolutionary chain that many people still believe, that we evolved out of apes and suddenly started walking upright and so forth. That's not necessarily the story of humanity. That something else actually happened that brought us here. And my research took me into the work of many brilliant researchers and scientists and geneticists, and specifically also the work of Zecharia Sitchin, who many of your listeners will be familiar with, who has written volumes on the ancient civilizations, specifically connected to the translations of the Sumerian tablets. And it was in 2007 that I accidentally discovered the mysterious hidden ruins of Southern Africa that have been a mystery for more than 500 years already, and nobody seems to know about them. And when I started researching them with my partner at that stage, Johann Heine, who had been photographing the mysterious stone circular structures and stone ruins, or what we today call the stone circles, Johann Heine exposed me to them. And then I started going on a quest to figure out what these things really were. And because I've got a scientific mind and I think differently, I guess, to other people, I realized that these were not just what most history books refer to them as cattle enclosures or cattle kraal, as they call them in South Africa, and maybe for your German listeners, the beeskrale, as they call them here.
Yeah, yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean,
But that, when I started walking through these stone structures and these stone ruins, I left Johannesburg and I started researching this, and I wrote a book called Adam's Calendar, which was pretty much on the discovery that Johann Heine made by accident about an ancient site. And I started researching that site as well because it was really just being ignored. And so it was an avalanche of research and information that was coming down the channel from late 2007 right through till today, and it doesn't stop. And the research and the information has found that there has been a vanished civilization here in South Africa that consists of millions of stone structures, not just a few thousand, or a few hundred or a few thousand or a few 100,000, but millions of stone structures that go back not just thousands of years, but hundreds of thousands of years. And I've discovered the scientific evidence to be able to present this. And then my research took me further to realize that these structures actually are energy generating devices, that they're not dwellings, that they actually generate huge amounts of energy by using the laws of nature and using sound as a source of energy. So that's just really the scientific part of it. But in a nutshell, what I believe I discovered, and many people seem to go in that same direction, is what I've provided the world with is the physical evidence of what Zecharia Sitchin wrote about in his many books about the Anunnaki, their presence on planet Earth, and their quest for gold and their setup of or developing this vast gold mining empire at the southern tip of Africa, specifically South Africa and Zimbabwe, which in the Sumerian tablets they refer to often as the Abzu, where the gold came from. So we now have a pretty much a much clearer idea of what was going on here 200 to 300,000 years ago. And there was vast amount of mining activity, mining gold, using a different source of energy to what we use today, using sound as a source of energy in a spectacular fashion. But at the same time, what this journey has done for me, because I started looking into the origins of humankind and ancient human history and vanished civilizations, what I also obviously discovered is esoteric knowledge and information of the kind that I was discovering myself and continue to do so, but also what all other ancient texts seem to point to, and that is that money did not evolve out of thousands of years of barter and trade between people, but there was actually a point in time in human history that money was introduced as a tool of enslavement by the royal bloodlines or the priest kings that were in charge of the planet and the people and the villages and the communities, the priest kings that introduced this thing called money. And since that happened many thousands of years ago, the kind of money that we use is still the same. Nothing has changed. The bills of exchange that our banks issue today and the central banks issue today are the same bills of exchange that were issued thousands of years ago by the royal priests or the priest kings in their temples to the people, except thousands of years ago they were issuing them on clay tablets, and today they're issuing them on paper. So I realized that money is a tool of enslavement and that it's completely alien to human nature. And it's because of this money that was introduced that we have all the problems in the world today. And that led me to understanding, coming to a new philosophy, which I called contributionism, and where people don't use money, where they live in united communities, where they contribute towards the greater benefit of everybody else with their own natural talents or God-given talents and their natural skills. And then I realized that this philosophy that I created called contributionism is actually very similar to the ancient African wisdom and knowledge or social structure called Ubuntu. And it's for that reason that I called the system Ubuntu contributionism, learning from the ancient past, where people live in united, harmonious communities in perfect harmony with Mother Earth and nature, and applying it to the modern society we find ourselves in today, and how that could benefit us moving into the future and allow us to live in abundance with everything we could imagine without the use of money. And that's a long-winded explanation of how my life and journey has taken me to where we are today.
Fantastic, Michael. And I think that's very important to learn also from your perspective, how you got to it and how you proceeded here and what discoveries you made. And there are lots of people who are waking up to the fact that also the so-called national banks are not national, but they are the central banks owned by private owners, by private banksters, as we call them. I actually call them blanksters in the meantime because the bank actually doesn't have anything. It's blank. But that's another story. And it's also not only the Rothschilds, which are obviously now very familiar by name as one of the most well-known inventors of this debt-based money system, or fiat money system as they call this in the US or in the English-speaking parts. But it's much older than that, and that's what you're saying. And maybe we can elaborate a little bit on that one again. How did you find out about this money system, that it is so old, and what do you think? What's the origin of the idea? Do you think those families or those royalties were so clever to have invented this, or maybe there's another plan behind this?
No, there's definitely another plan behind it. The entire banking system that we have today is directly connected to the legal system, and the legal system has got nothing to do with justice, but with controlling people. So, when I talk about the law and the legal system, I'm not talking about justice for the people. I'm talking about the laws that have been written by the lawmakers, and that is not written for the benefit of the people. So this is really what I need to just tell you and your audience. All of this information is in my new book. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that about a week ago or so, I released my new book called Ubuntu Contributionism that contains all this information and lays it out for you if you're new to it, so that it doesn't come as a shock. So I do it in gentle steps and take you from the shallow water into the deep water, so that you realize that there is something that we can do about it. But you're
Yeah,
quite.
Michael, just a question in between. Is this book already in the shelves? I mean, can people get it, and where would they get it eventually?
Yes, you can order it on Amazon, the printed version. And fortunately, Amazon, provides the print-on-demand option, so that allows people like me very quickly to release a book worldwide. And unfortunately, it's only available in English. But if there are any German publishers or authors who would like to take it on in German, I'll be very happy to talk to them about it. And you can also order it as an ebook, download it as an ebook on my website, michaeltellinger.com, or on the Ubuntu Party website, ubuntuparty.org.za, and so you can get it as an ebook or a physical book. In South Africa, it'll be in the bookshops probably just after Christmas, but
Okay.
not in Europe, fortunately, at this
Yeah,
stage.
but you can get it through Amazon or whatever, or through you directly with downloads possibilities.
Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and it is very important also to advertise this or to promote this, because it should be common knowledge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the you see, once you realize that the entire system, not just a small part of it, or the banking system, or the education system, or the corporate system, the entire global social economic structure has been meticulously and maliciously created and manipulated to constantly enslave humanity, and to keep them in a perpetual state of ignorance without knowing what's really going on, by feeding people the things that the people are fed: television, nonsensical TV shows, technology that we think is advanced, but it's actually not very advanced technology, feeding us electricity, controlling us through the supply of electricity that is expensive and that is totally controllable, and so forth, and petroleum industry, and the media. Obviously, as you know, the mainstream media does not cover any of these topics because that's controlled by the banking families. So once you realize that it's the entire thing that is meticulously controlled, it only starts to make sense then. Because as most people still think that, yeah, it's the banks, they just charging too much interest and they shouldn't do this, and they should. People don't realize how corrupt and crooked the banks are. It's got actually nothing to do with the money. It's not about the money. The money is just the tool of control. So, the banking families can print as much money as they want. And just to come back to what you said earlier, it's very important for people to realize that all the central banks in the world, with the exception of maybe 3 countries, North Korea, Cuba, and Iran, and there might be some others that we're missing. Until recently, it also included Iraq and Libya and so forth, but no longer Libya and no longer Iraq. All the other central banks in the world, the Bank of England, Deutsche Bank, Barclays, the Federal Reserve Bank in America, the South African Reserve Bank, which is one of the most powerful banks in the world because of the minerals that they control. All the central banks are private companies. People must realize this and not think that this is some trick that people like me and researchers are playing on the people. These are hard facts. These are private companies that have usurped the freedom of of the people of the world. They have forced themselves through over thousands of years into positions of control, and they've kept those positions of control through how? How did they manage to do this? That's the big question. And those are the dots that I help to connect for the people in my book, because if you can't see the connection, how this is all connected and how far back it goes, it will confuse you for many, many years. And what I said to you earlier, Detlev, is that the same way that the banks operate today, the same way the first and the original bankers, who were the priest kings in the Sumerian temples of, of the Sumerian Empire. This goes back to more than 2000 BC. In the British Museum, that's where you find the oldest evidence of the first money that I've been able to find. It is not a few hundred years BC or whatever you read in most history books. That's all misinformation. The oldest form of money that I've been able to find are clay tablets that were printed and inscribed, should I say, not printed, they were inscribed by the scribes of the priest kings in the temples. And in those days, nobody could write, right? The only people that could write were the royalty and the scribes that would do all the writing for the royalty.
Wow, that's wow. Can we see some photos or you know of these?
Yeah.
Do you have a link there, or
Well,
do you have this in your book, or?
yes, in my book, I show you this clay tablet that is at the moment the oldest, what I call bill of exchange that you'll find in the world. Now, also remember that banks do not work with money. Okay, now this is just fantastic. And also for your listeners that don't know, I've spent the last 3 years, more than 3 years, in the Supreme Court of Johannesburg and also in the Constitutional Court of South Africa, fighting the banks on my own. I didn't have legal representation. I was representing myself. So I
Wow.
forced myself to learn all about money, how the legal system works, how the money and the legal system are inextricably connected, how the banks control the legal system, and how the legal system upholds the rights of the banking corporations against the rights of living, breathing human beings. So I put my house on the line, which I lost because you cannot win against the banks. So I lost my house, I lost a lot of money, but what I did achieve is to get the information out. And the sacrifices that are made are now benefiting thousands and more people every day, because they've learned from the experiences that I've had and the knowledge that I've gained from the legal system and the banking system. And already I know of at least a dozen people and many thousands of others from the emails that we get that are benefiting from the knowledge that we've gained in those 3 years in the Supreme Court of Johannesburg.
Well,
So
Michael, you will be rewarded by the universe somehow. Don't worry. I mean, there are
that,
positive forces at work. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the process of awakening, right?
yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't want reward for this. I'm not doing this for reward. The only reward I want is for people to wake up and realize what's going on. That'll be my best reward. I didn't do this because I'm ignorant. I did this because I realized that the risks were very high, and they continue to be high. But if that's the journey you choose, then that's the journey you must take. So,
Well, I was very pleased, and that's great. A great thing you did, that you were asking questions to the president of the Republic of South Africa
yes.
for revealing the information about the corporation of the Republic of South Africa.
Oh,
Now,
yes.
could you elaborate on this a little bit? Because this is a topic which is very interesting for all of us here, because I had this in the first 2 hours of German. We were talking about the corporation of the Federal Republic of Germany, which is also a corporation.
Yes, absolutely. So at least your audience is familiar with this now. Just like every central bank in the world is a private corporation, a private company that dictates the financial policy of the country to the government and the people. It's unthinkable. It's like allowing BP, British Petroleum, or Shell to dictate the financial policy and print the money for the people. It's an insane thought. So so just like those are private corporations, every country in the world is a private corporation, registered as a corporation and run as such. And this is a big shock to many people when they discover this. But at the same time, it's part of the rapid awakening that's happening. So, and this is how we've been enslaved. So remember when I said earlier, the entire social economic system of the world has been set up to control humanity. And now you can start seeing why I can say that, and why people like you are doing such a critically important job to expose this corruption and fraud and crime against humanity that's been going on for hundreds of years without people's knowledge. So, in ancient times, people were enslaved physically. They were slaves. They were bought and they were property. And then when they realized they couldn't enslave people for very much longer, and kingdoms are no longer so popular around the world, it's now republics and democracies. And we think, oh yes, we're free because we live in a democracy and we've got a right to vote, and those are just lies and deceptions that have shifted the focus away from royalty and royal kings to presidents who are selected, not elected, that are selected by the royal banking bloodlines, and they are then put into power to carry on to promote the agenda of the banking royal bloodlines to continue controlling the people. So we were talking about the ancient money system, and so I just want to finish by saying that banks don't work with money; they work with what they refer to as bills of exchange and promissory notes and negotiable instruments and checks. So when you talk about money, that's just a nice word that they use for people across the counter, on the other side of the counter at the bank. On the bank side of the counter, they work with negotiable instruments, bills of exchange, and promissory notes. Those are the main main pieces of paper they work with. Now, these are just pieces of paper that have no value, that they just take from somewhere, and they put a fancy stamp and some fancy logos and stamps on it, and suddenly they've created value of 200 billion Deutsche Mark or $500 billion or whatever the number is that they choose, and then they exchange that with the government, and then the people have to work to pay it back to this private corporation that has made the money out of thin air, like you said. The banksters are creating money out of thin air. Now, when I was in court in Johannesburg, we got as far as getting the bank to admit that when they made the so-called loan to me, they didn't have the money that they claimed they loaned me. So they were actually breaking contract law, because you can't lend something that you don't have, right?
Yes, that's so ridiculous, isn't it?
So they admitted that. Then they admitted that, yes, they do sell the contracts, and they do sell the promissory notes with the people's signature. They trade that, but they say it's their right to cede the pieces of paper. Then we argued that ceding it is different to selling it, and they're not ceding it, they are selling it outright. And this is very important for people to see the difference between this. So they're making an outright sale. It's not a cession. It's an outright sale where the bank loses all title to the property, whether it's your car, your house, whether it's your credit card, whether it's your overdraft. The moment the bank sells that contract or the piece of paper with your signature on it to the third party, which in most instances in South Africa and other parts of the world as well are called special purpose vehicles corporations, that special purpose vehicle third party company now owns that contract, that now it owns that promissory note with your signature on it. The bank is no longer the owner, and the bank no longer has locus standi or any right to proceed with legal action against you. But they get away with it in court because they're masters at deception. The bank also agreed that they received a payment from me in the form of a bill of exchange, but they denied its value, and they just poo-pooed it, pushed it under the carpet. They admitted that they create money out of thin air by fancy debits and credits. They admitted that they didn't have the original contract in the court, that it was available for me to view in the lawyer's office. And all of these things that the judge should have thrown it out of the court and not allowed them anything, and actually awarded me damages for their fraudulent attack on me. But that didn't happen. The judge pulled out a pre-written judgment that was written before he came into the court. He pulled out a pre-written judgment and handed down a judgment where my house was going to be sold in auction. And this is how they work the legal system and the judiciary, how they pay off the judges, and this is how they keep the lies and the corruption and the crimes alive. It's quite spectacular.
Yeah, it's a scandal, really, because it's deception as well. I mean, we found out over here in Europe and other places that even the courts are corporations. So, you know, we also have the Admiralty law or maritime law and common law as expressions. You know, people are not aware of those facts. Is that true?
No, absolutely. So in my book, I have got a very large section on the maritime law and the corporate law as opposed to common law. So that's a huge lesson for people that are new to this, to see how maritime law and admiralty law has been utilized to completely hijack our humanness, which reduces human beings and living, breathing human beings. It reduces each and every one of us to being a piece of paper, to be an identity number, to be what you will know as a straw man. And we all believe, as you and your listeners, many of them will know, that, you know, we all believe that we're living, breathing human beings and that our rights are being represented and upheld by our constitution. No. In South Africa, as we said already, all countries of the world are corporations. So when you look at the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, just in the name, you know that it's not the Constitution of the people of South Africa. It's the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. What is the Republic of South Africa? That is a corporation which is registered on the U.S. Securities Exchange, just like all the other countries are registered as corporations, including Germany.
Yeah.
And
right.
So this is when you start seeing the depth of the lies and deception, it is just spectacular. And that's when the lights go on. And, you know, you first want to argue against it. You can't believe it because the corruption is so deep and it runs for so many hundreds of years, actually thousands of years, as I've mentioned. And now we got to decide, well, what are we going to do about it? And this is where the good news comes in. So before we get too negative about it, I think it's important to tell the people that there is a very simple solution for all these problems. And all your listeners will know, if you get a bunch of high school students in a room and you ask them to solve the problems of Germany or the United States or of South Africa, I can promise you that within 2 or 3 hours, those high school students will put a list of things together that need to be done that will solve all the problems. There is no doubt about that. The only problem they're going to have is money.
Yeah.
And the bankers that provide the money to create the solutions will say, oh, sorry, we love your solutions. Those are brilliant solutions. But, you know, we don't know if we can provide the money for that. And that's where the problem always comes in. So the only way we're going to free ourselves from this enslavement that's been going on for thousands of years, this is why I call it the slave species of God. And I'm talking of God with a small g, not God with a big G. I'm talking of God as in other beings that have got advanced knowledge and power to control humanity. So the only way we can escape this tyranny that's been imposed on humanity for so many thousands of years is only to do one thing: stop using their money. If we don't use their money, they have no control over us, the people.
Yes.
And that is where the concept of contributionism, or the ancient African wisdom, which is actually echoed in every ancient civilization around the world, and that is called Ubuntu. I am what I am because of who we all are. The Native Americans have an expression: if it's not good for all of us, it's no good at all. And you start seeing the wisdom of the ancient people that was destroyed about 500 years ago when the Europeans started conquering the rest of the world, the native populations, the Americas and Africa and Asia and Australia. And that's when the Eurocentric philosophies and the corporate structures started to being imposed on the native people of the world. And so it's really the last 500 years that have caused the great damage to humanity. And I believe what they did is absolutely criminal, because they did something very clever, because it's cunning, it's malicious, it is crimes against humanity, as we all know. What they did is they destroyed all the knowledge of the native populations. They burnt all their sacred books. They burnt all the thousands of years of accumulated information. They destroyed everything. And by doing that, they severed the people from their ancestors and the wisdom and the knowledge of their ancestors, and replaced it with Eurocentric corporate law and corporate religion. And that is the legacy we face today.
Yeah, it's very disturbing, really. Now, Michael, we are in the middle of the United We Strike Radio Marathon, and we'll be breaking on top of the hour. But on the second hour, we have enough time to talk about Ubuntu and what your experiences are. First of all, we start with the objectives again, what you were planning with that, and then we have plenty of time to discuss this. What I would like to ask you again, you post this on your ubuntuparty.org.za website. On December 5, the legal notice to Jacob Zuma, in reference to the incorporation of South Africa, you've posted a legal notice to him to explain what it is all about with the corporation of Republic of South Africa. Do you have any news on that, or could you elaborate or explain this to our audience quickly?
Yeah, well, obviously, the questions are very simple. I don't know if you have them in front of you. Maybe you can read them out for the people so they can understand. So the questions, if I can lay out the reason why I did this, is because if they answer any of those questions, they're basically incriminating themselves for committing crime against humanity and enslaving the people of South Africa, and admitting to the fact that they've turned our country into a corporation at the expense of the people, who have now become the slaves of the corporate government. So this is why I posted those questions. But obviously I didn't have an answer, and they will not answer me, because if they answer any one of those questions, they're admitting their guilt. And so this is how they get away with it. They just shut up. And also, Detlev, that's why I turned the Ubuntu Liberation Movement into a political party. And in case your listeners are not aware of this, we will be contesting the South African election in 2014. We don't know yet what date it will be. That has not been set yet. But we will be contesting. The Ubuntu Party will be on the ballot. Not because I want to go into politics, but because it is a perfect platform to expose the crimes and the fraud of the government and the banks, the South African Reserve Bank, as a private corporation that has stolen the country from its people. Because they are really the guilty party, is the central bank, because they control the government. And this is a great platform to expose all of these crimes. Because if it wasn't registered as a political party, I could be sent to jail for treason. You see, that's how strongly and cleverly the legal system has been set up. But because it is now a political manifesto, and our promise to the people to say that we will close the South African Reserve Bank, we'll stop the Rothschild-owned bank to issue private money for the people of the country and continue enslaving them. We'll replace the central bank by a people's bank, where the money is issued for the people, by the people, which is tax-free and interest-free, so that South Africa can become prosperous in no time and create everything and build anything and create anything that the people want. What the people want is what the people should have. That's what the government should be doing. After all, we elect our government to be our servant, right? And every
True.
country in the world, the German government is the servant of the German people. Are they serving the German people? Of course not.
Of course not. They're not even a government. It's just an organization, a non-governmental organization, which we found out, by the way. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd
Yeah,
like to hear more. Tell me.
that's even another story. I mean, you wonder why there are wars all over the world still going on without declaration of wars.
Yeah.
It's because we're still at war. The Second World War never ended,
No.
and the German Reich or the German Empire is still existing.
Yes.
It is not functioning because of lack of bodies, but the new federal government of or Federal Republic of Germany is not a sovereign state. Has not replaced the German Empire. It is a non-governmental organization put in place by the Allied forces, mainly the U.S. corporation, in order to milk, the people, to get to squeeze everything out of them, and we are still enslaved. We are still at war.
Yeah. Well, the Third Reich just moved. They once again very cleverly they create the illusion that the people are free, but they enslave them with money. And this is what I was leading up to earlier, and then I got sidetracked. Is if when you realize that you can't enslave people physically anymore, and the producers of Zeitgeist actually put it beautifully. Zeitgeist, the movie, I trust you're familiar with that.
Sure. Yeah.
The producer Zeitgeist said it beautifully, where you can no longer enslave the people with whips and chains, because if you enslave people physically, you have to house them, put a roof over their head, you have to feed them, and you have to clothe them. So to replace that, you tell them, okay, you know what? You're going to be free. You're no longer my slave. You can go and live wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can clothe yourself. You can get your own food, but you need money to do all that stuff. And the money that you need, you can only get from me by working for me. So you've not liberated the people, given them freedom. You've enslaved them even more, because now they actually have to work for the corporation, work for you, work for the slave owner. The slave ownership has shifted from the landlords and the slave owners to the bankers. The bankers have remained forever the slave masters of humanity, every single one of us. And it's spectacular. When that penny drops for you, it's a life-changing moment for everyone when that happens.
Yeah, I agree. And, we will be talking about this in the next hour of our United We Strike Radio Marathon. We will have a break on top of the hour. So giving Michael the opportunity to grab a cup of coffee or something like that.
Yeah.
And also, for people to tune in into our show today, which is, we've got Michael Tellinger here from the Ubuntu Liberty movement from South Africa, which is actually a worldwide initiative, and we will be talking about this in the next hour intensively. As long as you have time, Michael, hopefully you are available for the next hour.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay, that's fantastic. So my apologies to the people who are hosting you there in South Africa to keep you so long on.
It got me out of the kitchen, and I'll allow them to prepare the dinner. They're actually having a barbecue, or as we call it, a braai outside. So they're preparing the braai, and when we finished here, that means they would have done all the work, and I would have very cunningly and cleverly enslaved them to prepare my food by doing a radio interview.
Wonderfully. Okay. Yeah, well, they will be listening later on when we upload the archives and the videos. Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael, that you made it possible for us to listen to your experiences. And I think this is stunning that you are actually showing people a way to get out of this enslavement, not only exposing it, but also doing something about it. And as you propose, I have this page open here. We talked about this. The Republic of South Africa seems to be a corporation. It's actually being traded on the U.S. Stock markets, right?
Yeah.
You actually, as representative of a party which is called the Ubuntu Party. Is that correct?
That's right, the Ubuntu Party, yeah.
Yeah. So you actually turned to the president of the Republic of South Africa, who is Jacob Zuma. And you also forwarded this to the state attorney of the Republic of South Africa. So it is official, right?
Oh, yeah.
You did this on May 1st, 2013, by asking vital questions. And I'll just repeat the 12 questions which you were asking. First of all, you are saying we require to view or to obtain for public scrutiny a certified copy of the original registration documents, founding statements, and title deeds of this corporation called the Republic of South Africa, all in capital letters. And secondly, who authorized that the Republic of South Africa was to be registered as such, and why? And thirdly, who is the CEO of this corporation, which is very important. Fourth, who is the accounting officer and what financial statements does it produce? Fifth, what are the assets of this corporation? It's very important to know. Who is part of this deal? Who are they taking from? Then the sixth question, are these assets traded by this corporation? If so, how and where and who is accountable for trading these assets? Seventh, who are the shareholders of the corporation? How are they appointed? Are there any Rothschilds in there? Eighth, what is the relationship of the people of South Africa to this corporation called Republic of South Africa? The ninth question, is there any agreement between the people and or citizens of South Africa and the Republic of South Africa? If so, where are those agreements and when were they entered into? 10th, do the people of South Africa have any obligations to this corporation? And if so, do they have the right to renounce such obligation? Very good question. 11th, since our Bill of Rights and our Constitution, as well as the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, strictly forbids any form of slavery or forced servitude, what rights do the people who live in the land referred to as South Africa have to cut all their ties and any responsibility to this corporation that they did not even know existed? Well, now it's public, right? What is the relationship between this corporation called the Republic of South Africa in capital letters and another corporation called the, in capital letters, Government of the Republic of South Africa? You have got 20 days to respond to this question. If it is our opinion that these corporations have violated the liberties and economic freedoms of all the people who live in this land called South Africa. In pure truth, Michael of the family Tellinger, born sovereign and free of flesh and blood and infinitive soul, founder of Ubuntu Party and Ubuntu Liberation Movement, and so forth. Great questions. And you didn't get an answer, right?
No, I didn't. But I suggest that that everybody that lives, or other people that live in other countries, in Germany, United States, Australia, Canada, that they should send the same questions to their own governments and their own president and prime ministers, because it needs to become a global movement of exposing consciousness, raising consciousness, shining the light on the atrocities. And this is the other important thing I'd like to say, and I think we're nearly at the top of the hour, but we don't want to fight these people. This is not, we're not opposing them. We're just exposing them for what they are, and then telling the people that we no longer want to play their game. We'll play our game. We'll change the game, and we'll change it so that we don't use their money, and we create our own new social economic policies and structures that benefit the people. Because if the governments are our servants and they're not serving the people, then we have the right to change the way that we are being served. And this is really what I want to talk about in the next hour, because the solutions are so simple. We must just realize that we are not the 99%, we're the 99.999%.
Yes, absolutely. Well said, Michael. And we will have the opportunity to talk with you in our next hour coming up in this United We Strike Radio Marathon. And we will go into a break now. And, I did send you a request by email, but you certainly didn't get it because of the crash down. I actually want to, or am in the preparation of translating what I just read to you into German. If you are in agreement.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said to everybody, don't even write to me. Just whatever is on the Ubuntu website is there for the world. Take it, translate it into your own language, and share it with as many people as you possibly can. Let this message go out as widely as possible. This is not something we can hold on to. The only thing I request from the people is that the Ubuntu book, my new book, is the only source of funding we have for the Ubuntu movement and the Ubuntu party. So I urge people, those that can afford it, if you can't afford it, don't do it. But if you can afford it, make a small monthly contribution to the Ubuntu movement and the Ubuntu party. Download the book, use the book, read it, and download it for other people, or buy the physical book and share it as widely as you can, and that'll help us also fund the movement.
Okay, so we go on a break now, and we're listening to Jordan Page, Message of Freedom. So we'll see you right after that.
You're listening to the International Community Radio Network.
Sons, as I write you this letter, days past and days yet to come, and the message of freedom, the message of freedom. I stand at the edge of the pages of history and lessons unlearned. It feels like these pages are remaining unturned, but boys, it's no mystery. Children, I'm sorry to leave you this world in a state of disaster. It was given to me in a similar state, but I woke up so late in the game, now spiraling faster. 'Cause freedom's the answer, so what is the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be a slave no more. Boys, listen close, for our souls may depend on the actions we take and the causes we choose to defend. So treat every man as a friend, and live your own lives in their divine processions, and transform your world with your selfless expressions. Reach out your hands, in time we'll understand. Children, one day I'll be gone, and you'll have to remember these words and be strong as you cling to each other, your family, your faith, and your father's song. You've known this all along. Well, freedom's the answer, so what is the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my second-rate despot the world's ever known, and for one simple reason, the people have kept it alive. And with no end in sight to the level of violence that men in high places will sink for to silence the will of the people, and you, it must survive. Well, freedom's the answer, so what is the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be a slave no more. Well, freedom's the answer, so what is the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be afraid no more. Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, to be purchased with chains from our necks to our feet? Forbid this, Lord, I know not what is left. Give me liberty, or give me death.
IC Radio Network and UWS strongly promote the use of grassroots patriot music. Please drop us a line and we'll play your music.
Yeah, this is Detlev of Wake News Radio, Wake News TV, and our United We Strike Radio Marathon today, December 14th, 2013. And remember, please, we are doing our United We Strike Radio Marathons every second Saturday every month, as far as we can, and everything works out, obviously. And we are a non-commercial, non-profit-oriented initiative, which was founded by the great Karen Quintostado. She had the idea, and now we are worldwide available. Now, you can listen to us by tuning in on our UWS radio, which you can find on our website, UNITEDWESTRIKE.com. You've got a player there on the left side. Just turn it on, and you can also listen here on our United We Strike marathon through Wake News Radio. .net Wake News Radio facilities. There you find several players where this show is being parallelly broadcasted. And we have in this section now in the coming hour the pleasure to have Michael Tellinger again. He's a great guest, which is who is talking about his experiences, which he made in discovering the matrix, the system, as you may call it, the scam behind the money system, the debt-based fiat system, and he's got also incredible experience in discovering, cultures who were able to produce energy out of sound, and we all know South Africa is the cradle of humanity, possibly. That's what many people have found out when stories are talking about this. And we will see whether he can talk a little bit about this as well in this second hour of this interview. And we're happy to announce Michael. I don't know whether he's got back from getting his coffee. Michael, are you back already? Well, it looks like he may have to...
I'm here, Detlev.
Yeah, you had to unmute your mic, I guess. Okay, so we had a wonderful interview in the first hour already with great information by you and experiences which you made. And you've also been terrorized by by the authorities, as we may call them, in South Africa. Is that correct?
Well,
I mean,
luckily,
personally... or?
Yeah, luckily I haven't been, but our lawyer, Raymond, or should I say our legal advisor, he was attacked in his home and tied up, and they made it look like a robbery, but it was clearly just a hit. It was an organized hit. They stole all his computers, all his backup drives, everything. So yeah, that was an interesting situation. But that's all done and gone. The one thing that we realize is that you can't win against the banks in the courts, because it's set up. The courts are there to protect the banks, and the banks are there upholding the courts and paying the salaries of the corporations. So it's a closed system. You're not going to win in that situation. But when you're on the outside and you discover that there's injustice going on, and we all in our hearts believe that the courts and the judges are there to dispense justice, right? Well, I have it on record. If you go to the Ubuntu website, you'll see from a few postings ago the actual recording in the High Court of South Africa, and this is from the 13th of November 2013,
Wow.
when the registrar of the Supreme Court of Johannesburg says that the court does not dispense justice. The court upholds the law.
Yeah.
Now there's a big difference, because the law can be crooked, it can be corrupt, and can be unjust. It can serve those who want to oppress the people, and this is exactly what the law does. It oppresses the people, and it benefits the corporation. And this is that was a huge awakening moment for me to hear it being said in the court, and that's fantastic to have it so everybody can hear it. It's not just me saying it; it comes from the registrar himself.
Incredible. I mean, it's just, if everybody would be waking up to this point, people would say, well, this is nothing which I want to be part of. So let's quit here and let's do something else. And that's what the idea is behind the Ubuntu Liberty movement, right? I mean, you are basically forwarding your experience and the experiences of others who are joining you in this movement to the people, so they can actually wake up to the fact that they are being enslaved, and you're offering solutions. And this is something which is very striking and important for everybody of us, or all of us. And maybe you can talk a little bit about this, what the objectives of this Ubuntu Liberty movement are, and what kind of experiences you've done, or what kind of projects you're working on. And that would be very interesting for us. And also talk about the books. I mean, I think you've written several books. I mean, not only the one which you were mentioning, Ubuntu Contributionism, but also you've written other books, right?
Yeah, there are 4 books at the moment. My first book was Slave Species of God, and if you're into origins of humankind and the mysterious origins of who we are, where we come from, and why we're here, that's a good book to read, because that'll also give you a foundation to understand why things are so screwed up. But then I followed that up with Adam's Calendar, which is the discovery or rediscovery of this phenomenal ancient site that Baba Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman, was initiated at in 1937. He was initiated there as a young shaman. So I realized that what I called Adam's Calendar was actually known by the Zulu shaman and the knowledge keepers, ancient knowledge keepers and wisdom keepers of Africa. It's known as Inzalo Yelanga, or birthplace of the sun, where humanity was created by the gods. And then that suddenly takes a whole new look at, origins of humankind, and brings modern thinking in line with or face to face with ancient knowledge and what ancient civilizations thought. And then when I discovered the stone circles of Southern Africa, I wrote a book called Temples of the African Gods, that exposes the vast vanished civilization that left behind more than 10 million stone structures, and the connection to the Sumerians and the entities called the Anunnaki that were pretty much the progenitors of the human DNA. and how they controlled humanity for hundreds of thousands of years, and their quest for gold, and where humanity gets its, or where we as humans get our obsession for gold, is from the Anunnaki. And I exposed this vast kingdom called the Abzu, where these gold mines are, and that's all in temples of the African gods. But all of that research, as I said in the first hour, all of that research has led me to the conclusion that money has been the central piece of this manipulation of humanity for thousands of years, and that probably about 6,000 years ago, the concept of money was introduced to the human race, and that's when it started. And the manipulation has continued until today. And it's for that reason that I then started researching how money affects society, and how the flow of money, and the fact that money has no value, as you all know. And I formulated the philosophy of contributionism and Ubuntu that is connected to it. So my new book is now called Ubuntu Contributionism, a blueprint for human prosperity, and then a subtitle, Exposing the Global Banking Fraud. So that's what's available now, and it pulls all of this information together. It goes quite deeply into some of the esoteric knowledge, the origins of money, how the bankers have controlled all the wars for thousands of years, all the modern wars for the last few hundred years, and how they continue controlling global affairs and global incidents and the false flag events, so that they can keep people in conflict situation all the time, through which they impose their divide and conquer principle over humanity, because that's what it's been all about for thousands of years: divide and conquer. As long as you can divide and conquer the people, let them feel divided and conquer each other all the time, you will control them without them even knowing that they're being controlled.
Very true. Yeah, and
yeah.
I'm glad you're here, and that you really have found a way to communicate with other people and then make suggestions, propositions.
Yeah, so this leads us to the question. So what do we do about it? So, Albert Einstein said two very important things, and he remains one of the most important figures in the last 100 years in human history, because he was a brilliant mind. He was a scientist. He influenced human thinking. He influenced the way we look at our reality around us. And unfortunately, his more esoteric thoughts were not publicized by those that control the global media, because that they weren't very, they weren't in line with the global, the elite plans. The Marshall Plan, right, for the human race. But the two important things that Albert Einstein said is that, first of all, we cannot solve our problems of today with the same frame of mind or the same kind of thinking that we had when we created the problems. So we need to think completely differently. We need to have a paradigm shift in the way we think about the problems for us to be able to solve the problem. And then the other thing that he said is that insanity is defined as repeating the same experiment over and over again, expecting different results. So, within Albert Einstein's two famous quotes, we find some very important directions and instructions for humanity. Think out of the box, change our thinking completely, and do something very different from the experiment we've been doing for the last 6,000 years or so with money. So that tells us that, in a nutshell, basically, every socio-economic system that we've had for the last 6,000 years or so has failed us. It did not work. And why did it not work? Because every single one of them was linked, connected to, and controlled by money and those who control the supply of money. That is the reason why each one of them is just a variety or a variation on the previous system, whether it's capitalism, fascism, communism, socialism, you name it, any kind of ism that you have, except contributionism. That's where contributionism and Ubuntu differs completely from any one of those. because it removes money from the equation completely. And why does it do that? Because I have identified, like millions of other people, that have been thinking it, but they may not have been saying it, but they've been thinking it for a long time. And this is why so many people resonate with the philosophy of contributionism, because they know that money is the problem and the tool of control. So Ubuntu contributionism, the 5-point mantra, basically is, first of all, it works without money and without any kind of control mechanisms, breaking down the hierarchical structure and allowing people to govern themselves without any kind of central government. I know that when you say this to people the first time, they get horrified because we are so poisoned. Our minds are so poisoned by this capitalistic way of thinking. And it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage to recognize how easily it is to get out of it. And so let me give you what I call the 5-point mantra of contributionism. And I would like your listeners just to remember this and think about it. When you start thinking about the problems, think about the 5-point mantra and think about how you will find your own solutions. And what I can tell you is that you know the solutions in your mind already. And I'm going to come to the frequently asked questions. But the 5-point mantra is no money, no barter, no trade, no value attached to anything greater than anything else, because all of our contributions should be and are actually equally valuable. And for people that think that what they do is more valuable than somebody else, must have a check on their ego and go back to the drawing board. And finally, a system where everybody contributes their God-given talents and or acquired skills for the greatest benefit of everyone in their community. So there's no trading, there's no barter, no exchanging of goods one-to-one. If I give you this, will you give me that? That is the problem. And this is where I also find many of the existing self-sustained communities, and some have become quite famous, have been at fault or have not really, you can't call them contributionist or Ubuntu communities because they are self-sustained and closed communities. They do not export their success to the communities around them, because if they did, we would not be living in a capitalistic world. Their contributionist philosophies would have spilled over out of the borders of their own communities into all the communities around them, and would have already broken down the capitalistic model of enslavement. So that's really the beauty of this. And what I find is that there, out of probably more than 10,000 people and 10,000 questions that I've had to go through over the last nearly 9 years of putting this together and working through it, trying to understand why things have gone wrong. What I must also tell you, Detlev, is that I specifically did not read any of the other philosophies. I did not read Marx or Lenin or Jung or anyone. I read none of those philosophies so that my thinking would be absolutely pure and coming from my own heart as to what I believe humanity wants and needs based on my own needs and desires for myself. So it is not tainted by any of the other philosophies that people often think that, oh, it sounds just like communism, So,
Oh,
are you there?
absolutely. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, you're not being deceived by the ideas of others. You just made up your own creation by getting influenced by what is available through the universe, right?
Yes.
And that's love. That's love for each other, right?
Yes. I kept looking into my own heart and searching, knowing that we have the answers. We all have the answers. And I must tell you, and I talk about this in my book, in the new Ubuntu Contributionism book. I explain in short the fear and the process that I went through, because I want people to know that they're not alone. I know they're going to go through the same fear and the same process of thinking that this is impossible. It can't happen because we are so poisoned. Our minds are so enslaved by
Are you breaking up
The
now?
current system that just like
Michael, you're breaking up here.
just like more. Okay, let me try that again. Is this better? Any better?
Yeah, well, we just have to explain to our audience that you are currently in the middle of somewhere in South Africa, somewhere on a farm area, which is having a little trouble with getting the right signal, right? Is that?
Yeah. Well, it still tells me that I got 3G, not 4G, but 3G, so that should be okay. How's that? Is that sounding
Yeah,
better?
yeah. Well, we'll try, to just for our audience, so they know that it is a little difficult to get Michael. It is not an easy one, but it's
So,
fine now. Yeah.
all right. So where were we? We were talking about our minds are so equally poisoned that it's actually spectacular because, as I was saying, out of probably more than 10,000 questions that people have thrown at me over the last 9 years, thinking, "Oh, you haven't thought of this and you haven't thought of that," and that I've had to go through all those questions and try and figure out how are we going to solve these problems in a moneyless society. How will things work without money? How will people's attitudes change? How will industry work? How will transport work without money? How will our education system and agriculture and governing, how will people govern themselves in their own communities? Am I coming through clearly enough, Detlev?
Yeah, that's one. Wonderful, yeah.
Um, and and so I've gone through this process, coming out of deep fear. So as I said, I think that I want people to know that they're not alone when they're fearful of this in the beginning, because as you answer these questions or as you read them in the book and you realize how simple the solutions are, how simple the answers are, that it puts a smile on your face. It fills you with such um, enthusiasm and such hope and excitement for the future, because you can see for yourself that it is so simple. It's just the system that has enslaved us and poisoned our minds, that has kept telling us that it's not possible, that only money can solve our problems, and only the bankers and only our governments and our leaders can solve the problems. We can't solve those problems. We're too stupid, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah, but so you took real tough questions and you really tried to find the right way by setting up this?
Yeah, and what I can tell you is, out of thousands and thousands of questions, the most exciting thing I can share with you, you can filter it down to only 13 most frequently asked questions. Can you believe that?
Amazing.
It is unbelievable. And this is the best news that I can share with you and your listeners and the whole world. It means that there only are 13 problems that we need to solve. And we don't have to solve them. They've already been solved. I've given the people the solutions. I'm not saying that they are the perfect solutions, but I believe that they are the foundation for creating all the solutions and solving all the problems. But we only have 13 most frequently asked questions. All the other questions are just derivatives and connected to these first 13 questions. And
Right.
it normally starts with human nature. Oh, people are lazy. Human nature. People are lazy. They're just going to sit on their bum and do nothing. Questions like that.
Mm-hmm.
And well, why should my value be lesser than somebody else's value? What I contribute is more valuable than other people, and questions like that. And does this mean we go into the dark ages? If we don't have money, are we going back to living in caves? How are we going to pay for things? And you'll see in my book, and even on the Ubuntu website, I've posted those questions already. And you'll have a smile on your face when you see, because that's exactly what people think. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, but it
So,
shows it doesn't it show also the indoctrination which has taken place over those thousands of years, generations
yes,
by generations. I mean,
yeah.
they
So
all somehow money
the
and
indoctrination, but
value linked.
also the fantastic.
Yeah. I lost you here a little bit.
Yes, but what's Detlev? What? Are you
Yeah,
there?
yeah, you're breaking up a little again, so maybe we have to adjust a little bit within your room there.
Yeah,
Signal.
I'm gonna move a little bit, so I'll sit the way I was sitting earlier.
Yeah,
Um, so what I find is that from those questions, it also shows us that our minds have been equally poisoned.
true, very true. Yeah,
We are all equally indoctrinated. Otherwise, we wouldn't all be asking the same questions. Isn't it? Isn't it amazing?
yeah. Does it have anything to do with this Babylonian, speech, the language which was, confused at that time?
Oh, yes,
You know the story in the Bible and so forth.
of course. And that's also where the whole maritime law and the legalese, as it's called in English, I don't know what you call it in Deutsch, but the legalese that they use, the language that has got nothing to do with the actual words that you use, but the words sound like they mean something, but they actually mean something completely different. And that's where I believe it runs a lot deeper than that. But obviously the confusion of the language goes a lot deeper to the fundamental sound frequencies of the primordial alphabet that consisted of 22 sounds and 22 frequencies, which seem to be the 22 primary frequencies that have been identified by various experiments and researchers. Which is also interesting, the fact that we have 22 pairs of chromosomes, and that the 23rd is actually the sex chromosome, the procreation chromosome, and that's all connected to frequencies and resonance. And I talk about this in my book as well, because we need to understand how the laws of nature affect the control systems, and how the technology that we've been given, thinking that this is a gift to humanity. Look how advanced we are. We've got technology like this and that. That's just part of the enslavement. The technology is part of the enslavement because it keeps our focus off. It keeps us running around in circles, worrying about technology rather than worrying about those that are enslaving us with the technology.
Yes. And basically, you think, I mean, do you think that the so-called Anunnaki basically, poisoned our DNA, or diffused our DNA, or misused it, or what do you think?
Oh, most definitely. They did both. They created a species that was dumb enough to take orders and follow instructions, or smart enough to follow instructions and do the same silly things over and over again, that would be fearful, that would understand fear, and that would be controlled through fear, because fear is one of the most important what's the important techniques used against humanity. I mean, just read the newspapers and watch the news. It's all about fear. But at the same time, what is encoded into our DNA, the so-called 97% junk DNA, that is actually what I would call the divine part of our humanness and our humanity. And that is what we're waking up to. That is what connects us to the divine source of creation, the creation itself, and the creator, the divine creator, if you want to call it that. The source resonance of everything in existence is actually encoded in our DNA. And that's what we're waking up to. And I believe many people are already very advanced in their activation of their DNA, while others are waking up without even realizing it. And this is why what you said, this is an age of enlightenment and waking up very rapidly, which leads to very rapid rise in global consciousness that moves towards unity consciousness, that moves towards people understanding that it is us that have to do something, that we're the 99.999%, and that we will no longer be enslaved by those that have kept us enslaved. And by this, I need to reiterate, I don't want to oppose anybody. I don't want to fight anybody. I don't want to challenge anybody. I don't want to have a bloody revolution. All I want is to share with the people, and the people to stand together and say, this is a revolution of consciousness. This is a conscious revolution where we move away from the old ways of being enslaved to the new ways of living in abundance for everyone on planet Earth, living in harmony with planet Earth, creating abundance and allowing people the time and the freedom to rise in consciousness, to connect with the universe, to connect with the morphogenetic field and the Akashic records, and truly feel the universal or the source field of unity consciousness that permeates, that connects everything in creation, including each and every one of us. And I believe that fundamentally that is the foundation of the philosophy of Ubuntu and contributionism. It allows people that freedom. Nothing can upset. Once you've got the philosophies and the cornerstones of a Ubuntu or a contributionist community in place, it is almost indestructible, because what I call it in my book is, I call it, it's a self-correcting system. Once you've got the fundamentals in place, you cannot corrupt it, you cannot destroy it. The only way you're going to destroy it is by force, obviously through violence. People, as you know, asserting violence and taking guns and taking control of the community. Yes, that way you'll take control of it. But if you follow the Ubuntu and the contributionist principles, you cannot destroy it. Nobody can corrupt anybody else. Nobody can bribe anybody else or tell you, I'll give you this if you do that for me, because everyone has everything they need or desire or want at all the time. And therefore, it's a self-correcting system. And any problem or any hiccup or anything that becomes problematic in the community gets resolved very quickly, and for the benefit of the people in the community. So this is why I can say this, because, as I said, out of the thousands and thousands of questions, I realize that no matter how difficult the problem is, if you put the question and put it into the system, the contributionist system will provide an answer, because it's the people that collectively provide the answers. And it is always for the greatest benefit of the people, not for the benefit of individuals at the expense of other people. And I've also introduced a concept which is quite radical, and some people find it very confusing, what I call minority rule principles, not majority rule principles. And I actually did that because I knew that it will make people sit up and pay attention. And I'm not saying that the few will rule the many, which is actually what's happening today, if you think about it, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely.
We don't have majority rule today. We have minority rule, but we are led to believe that through democracy and the most votes will then rule the decisions. Well, majority rule system and democracy is just a bullying tactic, It's nothing more than bullying a group of people into doing what another group of people wants.
And also most of them are corporations anyways, and there's no democracy in a corporation, right?
Exactly. And thanks for reminding the listeners about this. In a corporation, there is no democracy. It's an autocracy, and it's governed from the top. And instructions are given, and laws are written, and rules have to be followed. And if not, consequences will be paid.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to pay every day for that.
Exactly. So,
now, Michael, we would be very interested in learning on, some of the Ubuntu communities are in operation already. Is that correct? What are experiences?
No, nothing is in place.
Nothing is it. Okay.
Otherwise, it will be spread around the world like a wildfire.
All right.
Now, I need to stress this very clearly. This is one of the most difficult things that we as humans are going to face, to move away from the money-driven world to a world driven by people, their talents, and their passions for life. That's really the philosophy of creating Ubuntu villages. Our whole world is being structured around scarcity. Think about it. There's not enough this and not enough that. We're told that there's not enough water in the world. What kind of nonsense is that? It's just insane. The kind of lies they're telling the people, and they're creating fear by saying, oh, there's not enough water in the world, and corporations are already starting to take control of the water supplies. Very soon, you're not going to be able to drink free water from a mountain stream because it belongs to some corporation. Just like the gold in the ground, it belongs to some private corporation. These are things we have to be we need to move very quickly before this actually happens. So just very quickly, so moving from a money-driven society to a society that functions without money can't happen in one step. Obviously, it's going to have to happen in a few steps, but that does not mean it has to take a long time. That's what I also want the people to realize. Don't feel dejected or think, oh my goodness, this is never going to happen because it's going to take forever. No, it's going to take a few steps, and maybe 3 or 4 simple steps to get us from a money-driven society to societies of abundance that create abundance for all the people without any money whatsoever. All it takes is a few steps, and that can happen very quickly. So I believe that the small towns and the small villages, and Europe is full of these kind of small towns and small villages that can actually start doing this and start applying the Ubuntu principles. What we have in Africa is the philosophy of Ubuntu is alive in many of the small African villages and communities. But unfortunately, they closed off because of the money. So they can't export the success of Ubuntu to their neighboring communities. While in more affluent and more wealthier or bigger towns, this can happen a lot quicker. And I think Europe, it could very well happen in a small European town. So this is where we got to start looking at what is it that the people need. Let me remind you that money does nothing. Money is just a hurdle to progress. People do everything. People plant the seeds. People grow the food. People solve the mathematical equations and build the bridges. People create the technology. People develop everything that we see around us, build the beautiful furniture and create the beautiful works of art. And people have the capacity for infinite love for each other. Money does nothing. All that money does is get in the way between people and doing all these things all the time. So money is just the hurdle to all progress. So we remove money, and slowly but surely, first of all, we need to remove it from the hands of the private bankers and start creating money for the people, by the people, so that everything and anything that the people want to create can be done. And very soon, when people realize that if you need something, if you want to build the bridge, the money will be provided because the people are in charge of providing the money through the people's bank, right? So if you want to build a bridge or send a rocket to the moon or do anything, the money will be provided because that's what the people want. So very quickly you'll say, well, if the money is provided for everything we need, why do we actually have to worry about even providing the money? Why don't we just build a rocket to go to the moon? Or why don't we just build a bridge? Why do we have to worry about the money? So it's a slow transition from realizing that the money is completely out of place in human nature, but it was enforced on us for so long that we think it's part of humanity. The other important thing is that while the small towns and communities have perfect opportunities to implement these Ubuntu and contributionist philosophies in the following way. Now, I'm going to tell you my way of where in the town that I live, this is what we are planning to do. Now, there could be other communities that could do this quicker, more effectively, and I urge them, please do this. Get the book, help to fund the Ubuntu movement, get the book, learn from it, and take out of it what you need and adapt it for your own needs. It is not the solution for everybody, but it's the blueprint for just so you can start thinking and going in the right direction, and then adapt it for your own community, your own town, your own village, and make it work for your own situation. So in the town that I live, we have a beautiful river that runs through the town, a typical African river. They're very different from European rivers. And there's a bridge that runs over the river. What I want to do with the Ubuntu movement and with the community is get together and decide that we're going to put hydro turbines under the bridge so that we can give the whole town and all the people free electricity. Once we've got about 10 hydro turbines in there, everybody in town can have free electricity. Obviously, we're going to have to negotiate with the town municipality, and there's going to be some interesting negotiations ahead. But I believe that in the end, we will get what the people want. Once people have the opportunity to get free electricity, we have a trade-off. We have a potential situation where we can tell the people, now we're going to implement the Ubuntu and the contributionist philosophy. If you want to have free electricity, all you have to do is contribute 3 hours a week of your time towards one of the community projects. With the money that the people pay for the electricity that now goes into the central account that is run and controlled by the people and not the municipality. With that money, the community starts a variety of community projects, starting with food and water, bread, milk, butter, cheese, building materials, all kinds of other things. Let your mind run wild, right? Anything that the people want in the town, in the community, can be set up as a community project. And this is where the contributionist principle kicks in. You don't only create as much as you need for your own community. You've got to create 3 times as much as you need so that you consume the 1/3, and the 2/3 that you create extra is made available to your surrounding communities at a fraction of the price that they normally pay for the things that you are creating. So you've created abundance for yourself, because imagine if you have a town of 1,000 people, and each one of those people says, right, I want that free electricity, and therefore I will contribute 3 hours a week towards one of the community projects. Remember that what I'm sharing with you is not the final destination of contributionism. This is just the introductory phase to get people used to the idea that together we can create a huge amount of goods and abundance on every level of everything imaginable. We can create abundance of everything imaginable. If you have
also the 3 hours which everybody would put in, basically profits to everybody. I mean, to himself or herself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that's a town of 1,000 people. That's 3,000 hours a week. Do you know how much abundance you can create with 3,000 working hours per week of the people working from the food production to fisheries to building materials to new technology to building new textiles, new materials, new shoes? Just let your mind run wild, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing. I mean, this is basically what living should be today, right?
So now that you've got this town where you've got virtually living for free, you're not living completely for free, you're living virtually for free, because there's still going to be some things you need. You're going to need to buy some of the raw materials from the factories that make them, that are still owned by the giant corporations. But now you're creating abundance for your town by selling the food, selling the building materials, selling whatever it is that to your neighboring communities, and making lots of money that you then use to create more community projects. So you use less and less money. The more community projects you have, the more you provide abundance for your town with more and more things. Eventually, you're creating everything for your own community with very little that you need, because there'll also be new scientists and developers and inventors that will develop new techniques and new technology and new energies. And the key thing here, Detlev, is that you have to make your abundance available to the communities around you. Because the moment you do that, you've created the domino effect and destroy the capitalist exploitative principles of enslavement by in all the communities around you. Because all the people from the neighboring towns are going to come to you to buy their bread and milk and food and whatever it is they buy from you, because they're getting it a lot cheaper from you than they get it in their own towns, where it is provided by the corporations. Can you see how you collapse the corporate capitalistic system very, very quickly?
Yeah, and I think the Rothschilds and Rockefellers will then try to get away from this planet because it's all over then for them.
Clever. So what I'm saying to you is that's the model that we start moving towards, not using money. But we're still going to have to use the money to set it up. But the moment we've set it up and we start creating the abundance, we start the process of removing the money from the system. And eventually there will be no money. It'll just be whatever it is that we need. The mining corporations, people ask, well, who's going to work in the mines? Well, why do you think that we're going to still be mining something? Why do we mine gold? And why do we mine, all the things? We're mining our planet. We're raping our planet into oblivion. Because of why? Because of industry. What does industry feed? Industry feeds the corporations. So, and if we have new technology and new energy that is free, are we still going to be driving cars that work on oil? No, of course not. We're going to be using new technology, free energy that's truly free, using sound as a source, not water or hydrogen or oxygen, sound energy, like the ancient civilizations did. That's my discovery that I told you about. So now we know that sound is the source field energy that can drive everything. Sound and magnetics. So we can use alternative energies that are free to everybody. We're not going to drive in cars. We're not going to live in cities the way we live today. We're going to live where you choose what it is that you want to do for your community, and your community welcomes you to do what it is that you do for them, because they recognize that whether you're a shoemaker, and remember that everything that we do will be a master craft. No longer slave factories that manufacture shoes by the thousands, by poor Chinese slave laborers in Chinese factories. Now every town will have 100 shoemakers and 100 tailors that make beautiful clothes and beautiful shoes for the people that last a lifetime, and that don't come from a slave factory somewhere. So we'll be doing so many different things that we can't do today, because today it is not financially viable. So now we're living in a system where everything is provided for everyone by everyone, because that's what they do. And everything will change. It's a complete paradigm shift, where you live in your community that you choose. You contribute what your God-given talents are, or your acquired skills that you become really good at. And you only have to do that for a few hours a day. Otherwise, what's going to happen if you don't only do it for a few hours a day? There'll be too much stuff. There'll be too much free energy, too many bridges, too many rockets, too many blankets, too many clothes.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
the beauty of it.
Yeah. I mean, this sounds like a really good plan. I mean, to me, and should sound to everybody.
And can you see how simple it is?
Sure.
It's that
also the animals. I mean, the wildlife. I mean, they are not paying for the food; they're just taking and living there where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's it.
It's a nature concept, right?
Yeah, we're the only animal that has to earn money to live on the planet that we're born on, and that is really the first penny that needs to drop for people. That is really the first obvious example of our enslavement. The fact that we have to earn money to live on a planet that we are born on. Who made those rules? I didn't agree to those rules when I was born. Neither did you.
Right.
Nobody agreed to those rules when we were born. So that is clearly forced labor, forced servitude, and absolute enslavement.
Now, Michael, we are heading to the next top of the hour, which will have a quick break. Now, people definitely would like to learn more, and you've talked about your website, but you're also making tours, where you have a presentation. Do you have any plans for that, for Europe or anything? I mean, I know you've been to the States. Do you have any tour plans or?
Yes, very much so. I've got a big tour in Germany coming up in March.
Wow.
So please, for all your listeners in Germany, please follow my website. Go to my website, michaeltellinger.com. and just watch that space. I'll put all the dates and the cities in Germany. We'll be doing 4 major cities, and if that goes well, then we'll follow it up with another tour of other cities as
Right.
well.
Hmm.
But I think we're doing Munich. Uh, I forget now. I forget the cities.
Hamburg, Frankfurt,
I'm
Berlin,
I'm
possibly.
I'm not sure. It all
Okay.
depends on where we can find venues. So that's also basically, if there are people in Germany that would like me to come to their town or their city, please email me and tell me if you can help us with a venue and help us spread the word in your community, and we will come to your community, come to your town or your city, and do a presentation on all of the stuff, and do a full day workshop on this as well. And this is how we've been spreading the word now for the last 5 years in the United States and in the UK. And I've done one German presentation in Heidenheim just recently in September,
Oh,
and that was a huge success. And this is why I'm now going back to Germany in March.
wonderful. And basically we are now broadcasting here from Switzerland. So, you're welcome to come to Switzerland as well.
Yes, we're
So,
actually going to be doing Vienna. We're going to be doing 2 German cities, Vienna and Bern, I think.
Bern, yeah. Well, Vienna is in Austria, and Bern would be Switzerland. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I mean that's great. So whenever you come to Switzerland, I would like to join you there. I mean, meet you there eventually personally. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, well, that's wonderful. Now, can you repeat the most important websites where people can find information from you?
Yeah, thanks, Detlev. Thanks very much for chatting to me about this and for sharing this information with your audience. My main website is michaeltellinger.com. That really focuses mostly on my discoveries of ancient civilizations. And the Ubuntu Party, Ubuntu Liberation Movement, that's ubuntuparty.org.za. And what I urge you to do, join the party, join the movement. It's a global movement. We have members in 175 countries. And
Wow.
if you're in a position, start an Ubuntu movement in Germany. Go to the Ubuntu Planet portal and the where you can start to connect with other people and start a political party in Germany. Start a Ubuntu party if you can, and let's create Ubuntu parties all over the world that share the same philosophy. This is, I believe, how we're also going to create a transnational and a cross-border global philosophy of contributionism and Ubuntu that transcends any separations and any borders that have been placed on us physically.
Okay, and people can get some information on this website of yours, and can contact you personally as well. I mean, this is difficult if millions will email you, but is there a possibility to reach you personally as well?
Well, there is when I'm online, but as you said, at the moment we're starting to get so many emails that it's become very difficult to respond to everybody individually, especially if they write long letters and long emails.
True.
So, we'll respond if it's absolutely necessary. We read everything, but we don't always have the opportunity to respond. But remember that the Ubuntu website is for everyone to use. So download what you need, translate it into your own language, send it to us so we can put it on the website and in your language, whatever language that is, and so we can start spreading that information to everybody.
Wonderful. So, well, that's a lot of things which we learned today, and a lot of things for us to do as well in future. But there's a light in the end of the tunnel, right?
There is a very bright light, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very encouraging, and I don't really think Rothschilds and Rockefellers will be able to fight back once this movement is spreading around the world. They just don't have a chance. Well,
No,
they could convert.
that's what we want to do, is just help them change their own way. Remember that they're experiencing the same rise of consciousness as everybody else. Sooner or later, they're going to say, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah, and then we're basically all one, and we are, yeah, isn't it? Sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, Michael, thanks a lot. I mean, we are heading here now to our next break. We are in the United Strike Radio Marathon. We're having this great guest, Michael Tellinger, from South Africa, with huge amount of information, very important for everybody of us to learn about. So I'm looking forward to having you another time in one of our shows, or meet you personally over here in Europe. So thanks a lot, Michael. Is there anything you want to tell our audience as a sort of last word?
No, thanks, Detlev. Just say, don't be afraid. Lou, don't let the fear keep you away from your destiny. And join the Ubuntu movement and start one in your own country. Let's make this a global phenomenon that explodes everywhere.
Okay, thanks a lot. Now we are going into a break, and Michael, stay here on Skype. I'll say goodbye to you in the break, and we're listening now to United We Strike song, which was done by Tommy Truther. So stay tuned. We will be entering in our next hour of the United We Strike Radio Marathon after this.
You're listening to UnitedWeStrike.com radio. Don't buy, don't comply. Ask why. UnitedWeStrike.com radio.